Welcome, John. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm innocent until proven guilty. Remember that.
No. Oh, that's true. Joe Biden's president now. So, and we have Dr. Ty Hauser here.
There's nothing innocent about that.
That's definitely. You're doing Gay Town Hall tonight?
Yes. We'll be on Gay Town Hall.
Yeah. Tell me about all the stuff you're going to be talking about.
It's going to be amazing. You're going to love the chat.
I can't wait.
I'm going to fill it with nothing but
rainbows and unicorns?
Well, something like that.
Okay. All right. I will. Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 7 p.m. Thursday, January 28th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories, important to you, we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
The world's first live daily queer evening news show, Out of the Closet and Into the Headlines on Q News Tonight.
Well, thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is a live, unedited LGBTQ evening news show. So whatever happens tonight, you're going to see it. This evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our world. I'm your Queer News Tonight anchor, Al Ferguson, and tonight, let's welcome anchor Dr. Ty Hauser. He is an associate professor of English and Humanities at Broward College, as well as teaching for extended periods of time at international colleges in China, India, Spain, and Bolivia. He also serves as our progressive college professor host on Happening Out Television Network's discussion and debate show, Gay Town Hall, alive every Thursday night and tonight at 8 p.m. Good evening, Ty.
Good evening, everyone.
And next, let's welcome anchor John Buckley. He is a client advisor at Rimowa, vice president and program director of the nonprofit organization Unity Coalition, as well as the creator of Kioba, a traveling social event offered free with inspiring speakers, topics, and a safe space for all same gender loving men of color. Plus, very interesting about him, he is also known as Buck Lords, as a member of the House of Lords. Welcome, John Buckley.
Thank you so much, Al. Please make sure you join us in supporting our trans art, which is going on right now. You can catch them tomorrow on our Facebook at 7 p.m., supporting Finding Your Light.
Excellent. Well, tonight we are going to begin with our queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Thursday, January 28th. Let's begin by queering up entertainment. And I love this story because I'm such a fan. The Twitter account for The Walking Dead just ended homophobic viewers. The Walking Dead has just responded to homophobic viewers in the best possible way on the official Twitter account for the franchise's most recent spin-off, World Beyond. A representative condemned intolerant bigots who took issue with the relationship between Nico Tortorello and Janelle Aladdin's characters. Walking Dead wrote, quote, "Hi, hello. If LGBTQ plus characters on television or anywhere make you uncomfortable or angry, please unfollow us. While we also encourage you to look within and be more accepting, know that there is no place in our fandom for hateful discrimination or willful ignorance. Thank you," end quote. Zombies everywhere heard the battle cry. Sadly, anti-gay viewers still felt the need to object to the romance, with one ridiculous commentator stating, quote, "Oh, it doesn't bother me, but the amount of them that are on the shows, it's just unrealistic," end quote. Another wrote, quote, "I don't really care one way or another, but it's not my life, so I don't care, but don't ask me to march or support it either, because I won't, but I'm pretty neutral on it, end quote. However, the positive comments far outweighed the negative. In the words of one fan, quote, they stated, sad that we are still living in a society where producers need to warn viewers that LGBTQ characters are going to be featured in a TV show. If you stop watching for that reason, then you're neither a true fan of the show or a decent human being, end quote. Humans everywhere hear that battle cry.
So I don't watch the show. I don't follow it at all, but I'm really concerned
Sacrilege.
that... I know, right? I'm not a good gay. I'm really concerned, though, that we're worried about reality and we're talking about zombies. So let's just kind of figure that one out.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, zombie or not, who gives a damn who they kiss or who you're with or who you love? It's a show, it's reality. We're queer, we're here.
Apparently, neither one of you have tuned into the latest Tucker or Hannity or Ingram shows, because there are a few people out there that really, really care. But we're going to report tonight, it's not as many as you think. So that's good news.
So next, we will queer up gay culture. San Francisco lifts gay bathhouse ban.
Ty goes wild.
Let's go to Grandma's house. San Francisco has lifted its 35-year-old long-standing ban on bathhouses. The Golden City's health department removed lingering rules from the early years of the AIDS epidemic that forbade private locked rooms and mandated surveillance of patrons in said establishments. These guidelines, established in the mid-1980s to curtail queer sex in response to the crisis, essentially amounted to a ban. At present, there is only one operating bathhouse in the Bay Area, Steamworks in Berkeley, California, which is currently non-operational due to pandemic restrictions. There's also a sex club, Eros, in the Castro neighborhood, which has complied with the aforementioned rules. However, the rescinded guidelines now make it possible for operators to submit permits requesting the establishment of traditional bathhouses, which includes locked private rooms. Raphael Mandelman, the supervisor of District 8, which encompasses the Castro, began lobbying to remove the bathhouse ban last year. He was informed of his campaign's success by city officials last week. The rule change comes at a time when many LGBTQ neighborhoods and gay bars and bathhouses are being decimated by the economic consequences of the pandemic. While San Francisco is currently in lockdown, California Governor Gavin Newsom's easing of restrictions this week has allowed the city to plan to reopen some businesses, including outdoor dining.
Well.
You ready to go to the bathhouse, John?
If that's where you want to go, then let's go.
Wait,
you know, clearly, I live in a different world. The bubble here in Fort Lauderdale and South Florida, we're talking about San Francisco, and they haven't had a bathhouse in 35 years, and currently closed in COVID. Apparently, we were never as concerned about bathhouses, and even in COVID, because ours have been open for a long, long time. The one thing that I do think is really very positive on the news of this is it allows us to take stigmas away from sexual contact and activity, and as long as it's done safely, who the hell cares?
I've got to wonder, though, how much are you going to charge, because the rent in those buildings is going to have to be out of this world.
Yeah.
Next, we queer up gay culture. 15 LGBTQ plus art prints you need in your life, including Queer Eye and Schitt's Creek. Valentine's Day is coming up, and you might be stuck on what to get your partner, LGBTQ friend, or yourself as a gift. Well, an affordable and thoughtful gift could be a print or poster for them to hang in their house, and what better than an LGBTQ themed one? Whether you want a rainbow-infused pop culture icon or historical figure prints to hang up on your wall, there's loads of different ones to choose from. We've rounded up some of the best LGBTQ plus prints from the independent sellers. Queer Valentine's Day is coming. All of these recommendations can be secured at Etsy. An exclusive Pride flag print. Alternatively, you can get this Pantone Pride logo print also from Etsy for the artsy or minimalist person in your life. How about a print of the Stonewall Inn featuring Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera? If you want some art that also highlights and celebrates figures from LGBTQ history, then you can get this print. There's also a print featuring portraits of Marsha and Sylvia with the quote, "Pay it no mind." A favorite of Queer News Tonight is Mind the Gay print inspired by the London Tube logos. How about a unique trans bodies are beautiful print in a tarot card style? This print is from the collection by the same artist that celebrates trans bodies. They're inspired by tarot cards and feature statements including trans bodies are beautiful, as well as trans men don't owe you masculinity, protect your energy, and blood of a man. The world has bigger problems, our art print poster. This aesthetically pleasing print says the world has bigger problems than boys who kiss boys and girls who kiss girls. If you want to get this print, that form celebrates being loud and proud about your sexuality and hang it up on your wall for all of them, then go to Etsy. This queer magic print could look stunning on your wall and show any guest that queer people are magical. Plus, if you or your partner are queer and into witchcraft, then it's an ideal Valentine's Day gift. A quote from Queer Eye by Jonathan Van Ness. Are you or do you know someone who is a fan of Kelly Clarkson? How about Queer Eye? And in particular, Jonathan Van Ness. Then this is the perfect poster for you or them. It features JVN's famous quote, "You're strong. You're a Kelly Clarkson song. You've got this." What else do you need to see in the morning hanging up on your wall for some daily inspiration? We're gay. Valentine's Day is important regardless if you or if another person is in your life. Well, that was a tongue twister. Yeah.
I love these posters, and my favorite in all of these that I saw that are being displayed at Etsy is "Mind You're Gay." If you've been to London, you know you see that sign all of the time in the underground, in the tube system, and it's just a hilarious print.
So that's my second favorite. My first favorite is the one on the screen there now, the boobs, bums, and willies.
I think they're all pretty great regardless. I mean, we're always looking for art to hang up in your home, so what better way to express yourself or your partner through that?
Absolutely. All right, well, next let's queer up politics. 83% of Americans support Biden's executive order enforcing LGBTQ equality. The overwhelming majority of Americans support the historic pro-LGBTQ executive orders signed by President Joe Biden in the first days of the administration. According to a new survey conducted by the national polling firm IPSOS, respondents favored the sweeping order to enforce the Supreme Court's 2020 ruling on LGBTQ workplace discrimination by a massive 67-point margin. An estimated 83% supporting the president's first actions on LGBTQ equality, and only 16% disapproved. Meanwhile, 2% of respondents had no response. After Biden signed the order on his second day in office, it was met with some backlash from TERF groups on the internet. As previously reported, the declaration instructed the federal government to extend the Bostock versus Clayton County decision to civil rights issues in areas like housing, healthcare, and education. The order would prevent, for instance, transgender homeless persons from being admitted to a federally funded women's shelter, or a person living with HIV being denied care at a hospital that receives taxpayer dollars. But soon after the order was signed, transphobic trolls came out of the woodwork to claim that, quote, Biden erased women, end quote, as the hashtag of the same name alleged. In a tweet, the TERF organization Women's Liberation Front called the decision a, quote, disaster for women and girls in the United States, end quote, and seemingly threatened to challenge the action in court. Abigail Schreier, author of the transphobic Billboard Generating Irreversible Damage, said the order, quote, unilaterally eviscerates women's sports and that a new glass ceiling was just placed over girls, end quote. These arguments were also propelled by Fox News, including Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham. Early indications are those claims have been overwhelmingly rejected, by the American people. A very good sign for LGBTQ America.
It is absolutely a great sign that you know, people are waking up and they're coming to terms with this. I love the executive order, but I still want to echo, we need legislation. We can't be doing everything by executive order. This is a short-term fix to something that needs to be solved in the House and Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said, Ty. I think with this new administration in place, it's only a matter of time will tell.
You know, the way to solve this problem is to pass the Equality Act. And to all of my conservative Republican friends that say the Voting Rights Act, et cetera, does it? It doesn't. All of these related issues, exactly to Ty's point, for executive order short-term success or protection is solved with the Equality Act. And very, very good chance that we're going to see the Equality Act in the United States by as early as May. We are chugging toward that conclusion.
Great. Next, we'll queer up the USA. HRC reports half of US states get failing grade on LGBTQ protections. Half of US states lack basic protections for LGBTQ people, according to a report released Wednesday by the Human Rights Campaign, the nation's largest LGBTQ advocacy group. The campaign's State Equality Index, an annual ranking of laws and policies, found that 25 states lacked inclusive anti-discrimination statutes and are considered at a, quote, high priority to achieve basic equality. This failure includes 2 of the 3 largest states in America, including Texas and the home of Queer News Tonight, Florida. The report said, quote, these are the most likely to have religious refusal or other anti-LGBTQ laws. Advocates often further LGBTQ equality by focusing on municipal protections for LGBTQ people or opposing negative legislation that targets the LGBTQ community, end quote. In addition to non-discrimination policies, the index also graded states on hate crime laws, transgender health care, anti-bullying policies, parenting and adoption laws, and bans on conversion therapy, among other criteria. The HRC report is especially notable in the reporting of Queer News Tonight and that 83% of Americans approve of the equality actions by President Biden this week. You can draw conclusions that the conservative political will in these 25 states is not matching what the population of each of their states really desires as it relates to LGBTQ equality.
I think foremost, we have a long way to go, especially with these last 4 treacherous years that we've been in. We saw some progression prior to that, but now we have to backtrack and make up for all of that lost time.
You know, tonight in Queer News Tonight alone, this evening, we see a connection that is really important for us. We're very happy, of course, about the election and the new President and Vice President Kamala Harris. But the connection that we need to make now is the overwhelming majority of Americans support LGBTQ civil rights, civil and human rights. The problem we are going to face over the next 4 years is what happens in local communities and in states. And this is where the attacks are going to come, because as long as Republicans control certain houses, the entire South is in the HRC report, including Florida. The entire South is not one of those 25 states. And that is because it is overwhelmingly dominated by Republican House and Senates on the state level and many municipal communities outside of major metropolitan areas. So as a result, the disconnect continues to harm LGBTQ rights because we're not seeing the power that we're seeing currently in federal and national elections.
And just to that point, Al, you're right with that in that local elections matter. That's why it's important to vote down the ticket, right up to the person that's going to be, you know, running your local government. That's going to make the difference.
And now it's time to queer up trans rights. Puerto Rico declares state of emergency as trans murders spiral out of control. Puerto Rico Governor Pedro Pierluisi declared a state of emergency in the U.S. territory this week, amid a significant number of targeted killings against trans people as well as cis women. Pierluisi, a member of the pro-statehood New Progressive Party sworn in earlier this month, announced the executive order that will provide sweeping protections against gender-based violence. According to a news release from the governor's office, the state of emergency will be in effect until June 30th, 2022. The governor said, quote, "Gender violence is a social evil based on ignorance and attitudes that cannot have space or tolerance in the Puerto Rico that we aspire to. Far too long, vulnerable victims have suffered the consequences of systematic machismo, inequality, discrimination, lack of education, lack of guidance, and above all, lack of action," end quote. What does that order mean for Puerto Rico? The order is, in part, the upshot of a years-long campaign from grassroots LGBTQ activists. Decision makers have been pressured to take action against the rocketing rates of transphobic killings that seemingly show no signs of abating. The various programs they hope will become standard in the U.S. grappling with high levels of violence against transgender and non-conforming individuals.
Well, you know, my friend Tony Lima, who is an operating officer at Ariana Center in Trans-Latina, Florida, has been very forefront in terms of leading the conversation going on in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, of the United States, 50 states and territories, has the highest percentage of trans violence in America. By population percentages. And we've been reporting many stories about the violence going on in Puerto Rico. The initiation and election of this new governor and this state of emergency is a dramatic first step to begin to protect trans rights on the island.
So another reason why federal legislation in the United States would be important is because Puerto Rico did, it might have gone under the radar a little bit, Puerto Rico did vote for statehood. So hopefully the Senate and the House will take that up and will be granted a 51st and maybe 52nd state with DC. But with federal legislation, that would, again, provide protections for Puerto Rico once they're admitted.
That cold chill I just felt was Mitch McConnell from Washington, D.C. Well, that's our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Tonight, we report the devastating effect that coronavirus is having on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community as we report the total number of LGBTQ cases and the total number of LGBTQ deaths. Let's queer up Quarantine Quickies. An interesting story. Lady Gaga calls out packed maskless gay dance club. And that's a very good thing. Lady Gaga this week voiced support of gay men dancing maskless in a packed dance club. With what we have seen with the approaching 450,000 American deaths and more than 30,000 LGBTQ American deaths, her tweet was, at first, to say the least, shocking. But only at first. No, this isn't one of those hashtag gays over COVID ordeals, but how is this tweet possible? Well, gays, as we know, are being secretive in their gatherings, in their dance parties, at their pool events, and as we've learned over New Year's in Puerto Vallarta. So a video of a packed gay club dancing to Lady Gaga's Chromatica album has gone viral, eliciting sighs of FOMO across gay Twitter. We learned about the event as it was shared by none other than Gaga herself, who captioned it, quote, "Goodbye COVID, hello dancing. Happy for Australia, praying for the rest of the world that we can all be dancing together soon," end quote. Following a COVID surge that peaked in August 2020, Australia, like its neighbor New Zealand, has largely stamped out the virus and returned to something resembling normal pre-pandemic life. The breathtaking moment was the envy of America's LGBTQ events, bars, restaurants, and neighborhoods. But the South Pacific seems to be doing something that apparently we would not do here in America for the last year. Create a non-political, Trump-crazy, LGBTQ selfish and self-entitled response to COVID-19. Australia and New Zealand acted differently. Australia, according to Google, reported just 6 new cases in the country yesterday. The video and Lady Gaga's hopeful wish is signs of things to come in our own LGBTQ communities here in America. Just not yet.
I'm just sad that we can't have nice things yet. Come on, gays, get it together.
Yeah, this is still very much a pandemic, and regardless of whether you have antibodies or not, you still need to be safe.
I'm not sure, but I think I saw a picture of Dr. Ty Hauser in Gays Over COVID in Puerto Vallarta. Where were you for New Year's? No, this story is just absolutely black and white. It is black and white. There's no middle. Australia had 6 cases yesterday. We had 6 cases in my block here in South Florida. And it's just a case that they did not make it political. They wore masks, they've embraced, and now, damn it, they're getting to listen to Gaga on the dance floor. I'm jealous as all get out. Jealous as all get out. Come on, we got to get it together. Well, that is our COVID news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network supports our LGBTQ community. An example of this is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set in supporting that partnership, while the network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live. We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
Hi, I'm Edwin. I'm a pianist, piano teacher, and I also work at South Florida Gay News in the advertising department, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this amazing queer church campus possible.
Finally, we thank our Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
Well, finally tonight, Queer News Tonight is proud to launch our Thursday night business professional segment we are calling NetWerQ with a Q, where we will highlight and network live with local LGBTQ business leaders and individuals and organizations from across South Florida. And make sure to start following all of our Happening Out Television Network shows on the business, professional, and employment-oriented online service platform, LinkedIn. Tonight's segment features Dr. Julio Capo, an associate professor for the Department of History at Florida International University, as well as the deputy director of the Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab at FIU. Julio researches inter-American histories with a focus on queer, Latinx, race, immigration, and empire studies. His book, Welcome to Fairyland, Queer Miami Before 1940, has received 6 honors, including being named as the best book written on the U.S. South, plus led to his curated award-winning exhibition at History Miami Museum titled Queer Miami, A History of LGBTQ Communities. His work has appeared in countless media across America. Julio now currently serves on the editorial board of the Journal of American History, is co-chair of the Committee on Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender History, and now serves on the board of SunServe Social Services, and is the co-captain in their fundraising efforts for the upcoming Florida AIDS Walk. To tell us more about his amazing work and about his upcoming lecture series happening this Friday at 4 p.m. called Undesirables, A Queer History of Latinx Challenges to U.S. Immigration Policy, let's please welcome Dr. Julio Capo to NetWerQ on Queer News tonight. Good evening, Julio.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Well, let's start with your book. Having only been here in South Florida for a couple of years, Queer Miami before 1940, I can't even visualize what that experience was would have been like. What was Miami like to be gay prior to 1940?
You know, it's one of those things where, you know, how do you study or research the history of people whose lives and experiences were never meant to be preserved in the first place? So you look at criminal records, you look at immigration logs, you do all this kind of research to kind of piece together the closest we can to what life looked like for people there. And one of the things that people I think often forget is that Miami was a city of the South, right? So there's the story of queer Miami in these early decades is a story about racial segregation, about racial violence, anti-Black violence in particular, you know, keeping people out of the borders. What did this mean for the early Bahamian community, Black Bahamians who built so much of Miami? And what it's like is that this is why it's called Welcome to Fairyland. That for so many people, because of the economy was so centered on tourism, it was kind of like the Las Vegas of its day. What happens in Miami kind of stays in Miami. But that was largely if you were privileged in particular ways, if you were moneyed, and if you were white. For so many other people, especially people of color, queer life in early South Florida just looked very different.
Was there any possibility, if you were in the moneyed set in Dade County and Miami prior to 1940, of being out in any possible way and being queer? Was that possible?
You know, it was. It was one of those things where it was, you know, kind of at least tacitly understood and for some people. If there were very, very wealthy people, for example. You know, the designer Paul Shelfin, who built Vizcaya, was openly gay, and he lived in that site with his partner. There's lots of cases like this. What we now know as, you know, the Versace mansion, right, was built by Alden Freeman, a gay man. So that before Versace, you know, there's all these stories about fairly wealthy, you know, or wealthy people who made a life in Miami in what we could imagine to be pretty out ways. And it's a pretty incredible story to revisit this history.
Well, I told you before our show aired, I can't wait to read this.
Oh,
book.
thank you.
It's very fascinating to me. So if you were very privileged, very wealthy, you could have somewhat of an open life prior to 1940 in South Florida, in Miami. How about if you were just a laborer, you were just a worker, you were just the average Joe in Miami? What would your queer life been like in Miami then?
You know, it depends. A lot of it existed in the underground, right? So a lot of these were really high profile gay bars, for example. In 1937, you know, decades before Stonewall and the raid in Stonewall, there was a raid in a gay club in Miami called La Paloma, which was one of them. It was out, you know, in the outskirts of the city. It was incredibly popular among like the locals. So, you know, there were sex workers, there were people we would now think of as trans, that is before trans as an identity kind of existed in that way, drag performers, and it was raided in 1937, again, decades before Stonewall, but not by the police, at least not at first, but by the Ku Klux Klan. So the Klan raids you know, so there's all these kind of interesting stories about how life was, we can't kind of separate the history of queer LGBTQ life from, you know, anti-Black violence, from incarceration, from immigration. These were all centrally, you know, part of the same story. And yeah.
I'm curious, could Miami be a dangerous place if you were queer in the 1920s or 30s?
You know, during its peak, it's really interesting. It kind of worked on season. That is, like, the police made very clear that during peak tourist season, so kind of November to March, right? This is before nobody wanted to be in South Florida, before the advent of air conditioning, right? This is actually really just true. So it was seasonal. Police would largely kind of look the other way during peak tourist season because they wanted it to be the kind of Las Vegas of its day. What happens in Miami stays in Miami. But then when the season would end, they would crack down on certain spots, including gay bars. So it was kind of seasonal in that way.
Very interesting. Well, Dr. Capo, how do we get your book? Direct us to where we find it and how do we get it?
So you could get it on Amazon, certainly. It's called Welcome to Fairyland, Queer Miami Before 1940. And it's published by University of North Carolina Press. It's an academic press that committed to really important issues like LGBTQ history and race relations.
Yeah.
So.
You know, when I first saw the cover of your book, the first thought of my that I had, and I'm dating myself, and maybe dating myself pre-you even, I thought, my goodness, if Anita Bryant could see that this book cover has been written in South Florida, she would literally turn over in her orange juice grave.
I'd be curious what Anita has to say. I'd love to hear from you. I've contacted her many times to interview her and still waiting.
Yeah, are you? Yeah, you're probably going to wait a little longer, Dr. Capo. Let's talk about the seminar that you're doing on Friday, and you moved to queer issues in the Latinx, especially in intersecting it with immigration. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing on Friday.
Yeah, so I'll be doing a lecture for the University of Southern California. It's a talk I often give. I'm an immigration historian first and foremost, I would say, one who's interested in race relations and how we understand race in the United States. LGBTQ history, I always have argued, is a part of that. And what I'm doing is I'm giving you a history of US immigration law from the 1890s to the present, and looking at how queer immigrants, mostly from Latin America and the Caribbean, have challenged that. That is, so much of our laws to this day, right? I mean, as you all have talked about in this segment, in the past segments, it's largely about US immigration laws about restriction. It's about how we keep people and control people from coming to the United States, right? And so much of that is related to even our domestic policy. So how do we understand race relations and changes in race relations through this kind of format? And one of the things that we'll see in this kind of lecture that I give and when I teach courses at FIU on immigration history is that one of the things that, even though there's restrictive moments and parts that are really conservative, is that queer people resist. And that's one of the things I really, really love to kind of emphasize, is that for all the Klan raid on that gay club, one of the things I love about that example is that it reopens in 2 weeks, right? That is, one of the things that I think happens is that people say, you can't intimidate us, you can't keep us down. And that's true of queer immigrants. And I'm really excited to talk about that. It's a passion project.
You know, I can't help but say to you that story on that club in Miami in what year? 1937?
37.
It sounds so similar to me of this club that was in Greenwich Village in June of 1969.
Yeah.
And reopened pretty shortly after that.
Pretty shortly after.
We are not going to be oppressed. Super interesting.
Thank you.
The slide, the image that we just had for the seminar, how do you register to participate and listen, and how do you go about doing that?
So there'll be a link, I believe, attached to the website right here that you could attend for the Zoom link, and it's just have to register, and then it begins at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, and before we let you get away, I've got to talk about SunServe. We're really passionate about our LGBTQ 501c3s. This has been a devastating 12 months to all kinds of LGBT and queer charities. SunServe, one of our leading advocacy organizations, especially in the trans community. Tell us about your participation with SunServe.
You know, I've been an advocate of SunServe for a long time. A lot of my friends have, worked there, have used their services. SunServe is an institution, and it does really important and necessary work for those most vulnerable in the LGBTQ community and certainly beyond. So I was really honored when they asked me if I would join their board a few months ago, and I've since now, been a part of their board. And it's, as you noted, it's a difficult time for a lot of cultural institutions and social service networks that are providing really vital services, especially in this environment with less access to healthcare, with really restrictive politics, right, that don't allow us to do the kind of social services otherwise that is provided by the government. So people like SunServe are stepping in and they have a housing program, they have mental health services, they have a trans program, certainly HIV and AIDS prevention and treatment, trans program. I mean, it's such an incredible, for the elderly, there's just such a key part of those who often get left out of the conversation. And part of Florida AIDS Walk, SunServe was listed as a beneficiary. So all the money that we'll raise, here you can see listed here, all the money that you donate is being matched. So dollar for dollar. So your impact goes, twice is felt twice as hard and twice as necessary. Again, especially for a year that we're cultural institutions.
It's never been more needed than this year. The image that we just showed you, and let's make sure that we say AHF, because we want to thank them, because if you participate and contribute in SunServe's name, AHF matches your donation. I always joke, it's like buy one, get one free.
That's right.
And in this year, in COVID-19, we definitely need a get one free.
100%.
So please help support Dr. Capo and SunServe in the vital issues and mission that our very important 501c3 charity organization does. Last question I want to ask you about quickly. You're from Hialeah. Cuban roots. Were you born on island or off island?
No, I was born in Hialeah Hospital, but I was born and raised. I was raised throughout South Florida, mostly parts of South Beach, well, at least Miami Beach and Kendall, South Miami.
Of course.
Yeah, the gayness attracted me very early on.
Right. Yeah, I bet it did. We'll explore that on another episode.
I hope so.
Right. We must have you back to talk about Cuba. Okay. Very passionate about it, especially the gay community and the Latin gay community in Cuba. The last thing I want to ask you about, we're really happy that you're here at Queer News tonight. We're going to have a little mini debate, and we're going to have a little mini debate between our dueling doctors. So Broward College or FIU, which one is a better institution?
Wow.
Go.
I mean, it's one of those things, right, where
and we've got to pull Ty into this three-shot picture. There we go. All right. I
never wanted to be in a threesome with you, Al.
I feel so offended. No, I'm kidding. It's one of those things, right? All public education is really necessary, right? And access to publication, to education should be a right. And Broward is certainly one of our key partners at FIU. So.
We have a lot of partners. We actually send a lot of our students to FIU. A lot of our honor students go to FIU with really great scholarship programs. And a lot of our international centers collaborate with FIU as well. We have one in China, actually, where Broward College offers the English credentialing, and then they move on to your hospitality program.
Well, I have to tell you, South Florida, I feel in this picture that you're looking at right here with Doctor and me sitting in the middle, I feel a little smarter just seeing this picture. So great. Dr. Julio Capo, we really do appreciate you being here at Queer News tonight, and we're definitely going to have you back because there's a rich history both in the Latin community, obviously, here in South Florida, but especially the history of prior to 1940 in South Florida. And we'll have you back, and we appreciate your participation tonight in Queer News Tonight.
Thanks for having me.
We've been happy to. All right, we're going to end tonight's broadcast with the big finish. These are today's silly or news that entertains the LGBTQ community. So here we go. In the big finish, did you see it? Trump has been trolled, probably going to happen a lot this year. Trump was trolled with a "You're a pathetic loser" sky banner flying over Mar-A-Lago and Palm Beach Island. Also, another banner said, "Trump is the worst president ever."
Where do I send my donation to keep this going? Like, that's all I want to do. I want to make sure it happens every day.
Yep. That's just it. Then we're done. By the way, hashtag if you would like to thank the sponsor of those two banners, just send a message to my friend Power Infinity. Read about it. You'll get the joke. In the big finish, the first private space crew is paying $55 million each to fly to the space station. There's what Apparently white privilege and money buys you.
I guess their GameStop stock really did well today.
Skyrocketing.
Skyrocketing.
Oh,
well, you know they're going to be going off to the new Marriott Space Station. That's what it's called. All right, finally, important, the big finish. Where were you when the Challenger exploded? It's still fresh, even after 35 years. Watch this.
Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.
Wow. Well, I will tell you that I was 8 years old, and we, I think I was 2nd grade, maybe 3rd grade, I can't remember exactly, and we were all gathered together in the auditorium where we watched it as an entire elementary school. And then the teachers had to deal with how to tell us what was really going on. It was pretty intense.
I was 1. I don't remember it happening, but I do. When I would see the space shuttle launch, my mom and my father did tell me about that one time that it exploded.
You know, at Queer News Tonight, we couldn't allow this anniversary to go unpassed without doing that and showing that, reminding you where we have been and hopefully where we are going. 2 notes. First, Sally Ride was the teacher, first teacher going into space that was on that shuttle. So as a result, an estimated 80% of all of the students in schools in the United States were watching live at that moment. 80% of all students in America were watching as that explosion took place. Second, deeply personal for me, because I was in Orlando and I was traveling from 2 locations in downtown Orlando on I-4, and I was listening to the radio, and a launch in Orlando is commonplace. You would watch the shuttle always. We're about 40 miles away, so you would see the shuttle go up from downtown Orlando. And as I was traveling south on I-4, the radio announcer said, Challenger has just gone off. And it was important even for Orlando because of the teacher, first teacher in space. And then I could watch and I could see the strange plume that I was watching before it was announced the explosion. And everybody in Orlando on an interstate watching it realized, wait, something really bad is happening. And this is the only time this has ever happened in my life. All of the cars in the interstate stopped and everyone got out of their car.
Wow.
That's what this moment was. For Orlando, for America, for 80% of all of the students in the United States, and for Al, January 28th. It's a very, very important date.
Yes, it is. Well, that is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share this news. We are the only television live video news that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of anchors Dr. Ty Hauser and John Buckley, we will see you daily at 7 p.m. Good night, America.
Good night.